Is absolute truth an inflexible reality, fixed, invariable, and with unalterable facts? Well, it is a fixed, invariable, unalterable fact that there are absolutely no square circles and there are absolutely no round squares, for example. While absolute truth is a logical necessity, there are some religious orientations, such as atheistic humanists, for example, who argue against the existence of absolute truth. Humanism's exclusion of God necessitates moral relativism. Humanist John Dewey, 1859 to 1952, co-author and signer of the Humanist Manifesto, 1, 1933, declared, quote, "There is no God and there is no soul. Hence, there are no needs for the props of traditional religion. With dogma and creed excluded, then immutable truth is also dead and buried. There is no room for fixed natural law or moral absolutes." Quote, "Humanists believe one should do as one feels it right." You can't logically argue against the existence of absolute truth. To argue against something is to establish that a truth exists. You cannot argue against absolute truth unless an absolute truth is the basis of your argument. Consider a few of the classic arguments and declarations made by those who seek to argue against the existence of absolute truth. Quote, "There are no absolutes." Quote, first of all, the relativist is declaring there are absolutely no absolutes. This is an absolute statement. The statement is logically contradictory. If the statement is true, there is, in fact, an absolute. Quote, "Truth is relative." Quote, again, this is an absolute statement implying truth is absolutely relative. Besides putting forth an absolute, suppose the statement was true and truth is relative. Everything, including that statement, would be relative. If a statement is relative, it is not always true. If, quote, "truth is relative," quote, is not always true, sometimes truth is not relative. This means there are absolutes, which means the above statement is false. When you follow the logic, relativist arguments will always contradict themselves. Here's another one. Who knows what truth is, right? In that same sentence, the speaker declares that no one knows what the truth is. Then he turns around and asks those who are listening to affirm the truth of his statement. Here's another. No one knows what the truth is. The speaker obviously believes his statement is true. There are philosophers who actually spend countless hours toiling over thick volumes written on the, quote, meaninglessness, quote, of everything. We can assume they think the text is meaningful. Then there are those philosophy teachers who teach their students, quote, "No one's opinion is superior to anyone else's. There is no hierarchy of truth or values. Anyone's viewpoint is just as valid as anyone else's viewpoint. We all have our own truth," quote. Then they turn around and grade the papers. Morality is a facet of absolute truth. Thus, relativists often declare, quote, "It's wrong for you to impose your morals on me," quote. By declaring something is wrong, the relativist is contradicting himself by imposing his morals on you. You might hear, quote, "There is no right, there is no wrong," quote. You must ask, is that statement right or wrong? If you catch a relativist in the act of doing something they know is absolutely wrong, and you try to point it out to them, they may respond in anger. "Truth is relative. There's no right or there's no wrong. We should be able to do whatever we want." If that is a true statement, and there is no right and there is no wrong, and everyone should be able to do whatever they want, then why have they become so angry? What basis do they have for their anger? You can't be appalled by an injustice, or anything else for that matter, unless an absolute has somehow been violated. Relativists often argue, quote, "Everyone can believe whatever they want," quote. It makes us wonder, why are they arguing? We find it amusing that relativists are the ones who want to argue about relativism. If you attempt to tell a relativist the difference between right and wrong, you will no doubt hear, quote, None of that is true. We make our own reality, quote. If that's true, and we all create our own reality, then our statement of moral accountability is merely a figment of the relativist's imagination. If a relativist has a problem with the statement of absolute morality, the relativist should take the issue up with himself. Come on, seriously. We all know there's absolute truth. It seems the more we argue against it, the more we prove the existence of it. Reality is absolute whether you feel like being in agreement with that or not. Philosophically, relativism is contradictory. Practically, relativism is anarchy. The world is filled with absolute truth. A relativist maintains that everyone should be able to believe and do whatever he wants. Of course, this view is emotionally satisfying until that person comes home and finds his house has been robbed, or someone seeks to hurt him, or someone cuts in front of him in line. No relativist will come home to find his house robbed and say, "Oh, how wonderful that the burglar was able to fulfill his view of reality by robbing my house. Who am I to impose my view of right and wrong on this wonderful burglar?" Quite the contrary. The relativist will feel violated just like anyone else would. And then, of course, it's okay for him to be a relativist as long as the system acts in an absolutist way by protecting his unalienable rights. Absolute truth makes us all accountable. But to what or from whom? To God? To nature? To each other? Watch our next video on the meaning of life to learn exactly why we're here in the first place. Hopefully, you'll begin to articulate what absolute truth is and how it really does have an effect on your life, whether you want it to or not.